Have you ever felt that strange pull? That invisible string that leads you to a place you know you shouldn't be? For me, that place was the Old Town Park, just as the sun began to bleed out below the horizon. I didn't plan on going there. My car just ended up in a nearly empty parking lot. It was that weird time of day, that blue hour when the world seems to hold its breath. The playground, usually screaming with the joy of children, was dead silent. All the vibrant colors of the slides and jungle gyms were muted, painted in shades of gray and deep purple. I got out of my car, a chill running down my spine that had nothing to do with the evening air. It was a feeling of being watched, of stepping onto a stage when you didn't even know there was a play. I walked towards the playground, my footsteps sounding unnaturally loud on the pavement. And that's when I saw it. In the center of the deserted playground, one swing was moving. Just one. It swayed back and forth, a slow, hypnotic rhythm. Back and forth. Back and forth. The chains didn't creak like you'd expect. They were completely silent. My logical brain immediately kicked in. It's the wind, I told myself. It has to be the wind. But there was no wind. The leaves on the trees were perfectly still. The flag on the pole by the park entrance hung limp and lifeless. My own hair didn't stir. Yet, the swing continued its steady, ghostly dance. I stood there, mesmerized, my feet routed to the spot. It was like watching a pendulum, counting down to something I couldn't comprehend. I felt a strange mix of fear and fascination. Part of me wanted to run, to jump back in my car and speed away, never looking back. But another, more curious part held me captive. I told myself it would stop. Any moment now, the residual momentum would die out, and it would hang still like all the others. I waited. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10. The sky grew darker, the first stars beginning to prick the deep velvet canvas above. The swing showed no signs of slowing down. If anything, its arc seemed to grow slightly wider, a little higher. It was as if it was building energy, not losing Italiano. The steady, silent motion was starting to feel less like a random occurrence and more like an invitation. Or maybe a warning. I decided to get a closer look, a decision I now question every single day. I walked slowly across the wood chips. Their crunching sound, the only noise in the entire park besides my own heartbeat, which was thudding in my ears. As I got closer, I could see the swing seat was empty. Of course, it was empty. What was I expecting? But saying eat, a simple black rubber seat, swinging with such purpose on its own, was profoundly unsettling. It defied all logic, all physics. It was just wrong. I stood about 10 feet away from it, close enough to feel the air it displaced as it swung towards me, a cold pocket of air that brushed against my face with each pass. The feeling of being watched intensified. It was no longer a vague sensation. It felt specific, focused. The source of the gaze felt like it was coming directly from that empty swing. My mind was racing, trying to find a rational explanation, a hidden mechanism. Magnets under the ground, a prank. But the park was old, neglected. Who would go to such elaborate lengths for a prank in a place no one ever came to at this hour? I must have stood there for what felt like an eternity, locked in a silent battle of wills with an inanimate object. The world outside the playground seemed to fade away. It was just me and the swinging, swinging, swinging. The repetitive motions started to have a dizzying effect. My rational thoughts were dissolving, replaced by a primal fear, a sense of dread that coiled in the pit of my stomach. This wasn't natural. This was something else. Something ancient and patient. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. The fascination had completely evaporated, leaving only pure, undiluted terror. This is not for you. A voice in my head screamed, you need to leave. Now. Breaking the trance was like pulling myself out of quicksand. With a physical effort, I tore my eyes away from the swing and turned my back on it. My body felt heavy, my legs like lead, but I forced myself to take a step, then another. I wasn't going to run. Running felt like admitting defeat, like showing fear to whatever was there. I would just walk away, pretend I saw nothing, and get back to the safety of my car. I took 3 steps, my back completely to the swing set. The silence was suddenly overwhelming. The crunch of my feet on the wood chips was the only sound. I could feel it behind me. I couldn't see it, but I could feel its presence. A cold spot on my back, right between my shoulder blades. I held my breath, listening, waiting for the sound of the chains to stop, for the spell to break. And then I heard it. It wasn't the creak of chains. It wasn't the whisper of the wind. It was a sound that didn't belong. A soft, airy giggle. The sound of a small child, filled with innocent amusement. But there was nothing innocent about it. It was cold, sharp, and it wasn't coming from the swing set 20 feet behind me. It was right there, directly behind my head, right in my ear. It was so close I could almost feel the breath of the laugh on the back of my neck. I froze, every muscle in my body locking up. The laugh echoed in the silent park, a sound that would be seared into my memory forever. It was the sound of something that had been patiently waiting, a game that had just been won. And I was the prize. I never looked back. I don't know how I made it to my car. I have no memory of my feet moving, of opening the door, of starting the engine. The next thing I remember is being in my driveway, the car still running, my hands shaking so violently I could barely turn the key. I never went back to that park, and I never will. But sometimes, when it's quiet, when the world holds its breath in that blue hour, I can still hear it. That soft, chilling laugh right behind me, a reminder of the swing and the game I unknowingly played. Thanks for listening. If you've ever had an experience you can't explain, let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, and don't forget to subscribe. The city is a cage. Concrete, steel, noise. It grinds you down. That's why I needed an escape. I found this park online, a sprawling green oasis just an hour's drive away, promising untouched wilderness and serene trails. It sounded like exactly what the doctor ordered. So I packed a light bag, filled my water bottle, and drove out, leaving the urban chaos in my rearview mirror. Pulling into the nearly empty parking lot, a sense of calm washed over me. The air smelled of pine and damp earth. A large wooden sign stood at the trailhead, a welcoming beacon. It had a beautifully carved map of the park, with winding trails marked in different colors. Below the map, etched into the wood, were the familiar words, "You are here," with a little red arrow pointing to the entrance. I snapped a quick photo of the map with my phone, just in case. Seemed straightforward enough. I picked the Lakeview Loop, a trail marked in blue that promised a scenic 3-hour hike. The first part of the walk was perfect. Sunlight filtered through the dense canopy of leaves, dappling the path in front of me. Birds I couldn't name sang from hidden branches. The only other sounds were the crunch of my boots on the gravel path and my own steady breathing. It was peaceful, a world away from the constant hum of the city. I felt my shoulders, usually tensed up to my ears, finally start to relax. I walked for what felt like a good 10, maybe 15 minutes, just soaking it all in, feeling the stress melt away with every step. Then I saw it. Up ahead, another large wooden sign, identical to the one at the entrance. That's odd, I thought. Maybe it's a major junction point, but the trail hadn't forked. I'd been on a single, clear path. As I got closer, a strange feeling of déjà vu prickled my skin. It wasn't just similar. It was the exact same sign. I could see the same dark scratch running through the top left corner, the same faint water stain near the bottom. And there, etched into the wood, were those words again. "You are here." I laughed it off at first. Must be some kind of weird park design choice. Maybe they put these at regular intervals to reassure hikers. I pulled out my phone to compare it with the photo I took earlier. Yep, identical. The same faded red on the "You are here" arrow. The same chip in the wood right beside it. Okay, a little redundant, but whatever. I shrugged, took a swig of water, and prepared to continue my hike. But as I looked back at the map to reorient myself, my heart skipped a beat. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The map, it had changed. I blinked, rubbing my eyes, thinking it was a trick of the light, but it wasn't. The maze of colorful trails that had been there before was different. The Lakeview Loop I was supposed to be on, the entire network of paths leading deeper into the park Te Warigone, wiped clean. The map now only showed the trail I had just walked, a single, solitary line snaking back to the entrance. And the little red arrow, that same faded arrow, was no longer pointing at the start. It was pointing right where I was standing, and in front of it, where the rest of the park should have been, the map was just blank, smooth wood. A cold dread began to creep up my spine, chasing away the morning's warmth. This couldn't be right. It had to be a prank. A very elaborate, very unfunny prank. I looked around, half expecting someone to jump out from behind a tree, laughing, but there was only silence. The birds had stopped singing. The woods suddenly felt oppressive, the trees like silent, looming giants. I took a deep breath, trying to rationalize. Maybe I was mistaken. Maybe the first map was different. I turned around and started walking back the way I came. My pace, much quicker now. The peaceful crunch of my boots was replaced by a frantic, hurried rhythm. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. The forest didn't feel serene anymore. It felt watchful. It took me less than 10 minutes to get back to the entrance. And there it was. The sign. The original sign. Or at least, what I thought was the original sign. Primera starredarit. My breath catching in my throat. It was the new map. The one with only the path behind me. The rest of the park was gone. A blank void on the wooden board. The red arrow was right at the entrance marker, where I stood panting. The "you are here" felt like a taunt. I checked my phone. The picture I took earlier. It was gone. Just a gray, corrupted file that wouldn't open. Panic started to bubble in my chest. I spun around looking back down the path I'd just come from. It looked the same, but it felt different. It wasn't a path into a park anymore. It was the only path in existence. I had to get out. My car. The parking lot. That was my only thought. I sprinted towards the lot, fumbling for my keys. But when I burst through the trees, I skidded to a stop. The parking lot was gone. In its place was just more forest. An impenetrable wall of ancient, moss-covered trees, where just half an hour ago there had been asphalt and painted lines. My car, my connection to the outside world, had vanished. I was trapped. I looked back at the sign, at the map. It was the only landmark in this strange, shrinking world. The map showed one path, the one I had walked, and it ended here, at this sign. There was nowhere else to go. My phone had no signal, of course. The compass app just spun wildly. I was completely and utterly lost in a place that kept rewriting its own geography. I tried yelling for help, my voice sounding small and pathetic against the suffocating silence of the woods. No response. I was alone. Alone with the map. I walked back to it, my legs feeling like lead. I traced the single line on it with my finger, the path I walked. The only path that exists. An idea, a desperate, terrifying idea, began to form in my mind. The map didn't just show where I was. It showed where I could be. With a trembling hand, I took out my pocket. I looked at the blank space on the map, the space where the rest of the park should have been. My heart hammered against my ribs. What if the map wasn't just a record, but a tool? What if I could add to it? With the tip of the blade, I started to scratch a new line into the wood, extending from the point where my own path ended. A thin, wavering line, heading east, away from this cursed spot. As soon as the scratch was complete, a sound echoed through the woods, a low, grinding noise, like stone on stone. I looked up from the map, and my jaw dropped. Before my very eyes, a new path was forming. The trees themselves seemed to part, the earth shifting and settling, creating a narrow trail right where I had drawn the line on the map. It was impossible. It was terrifying. But it was real. A sliver of hope, sharp and dangerous, cut through my fear. I could make my own way out. I could draw my way to freedom. I started walking down the new path, my knife held tight. After a few minutes, I stopped and went back to the sign. I needed to see. The map had updated itself. My new, crudely scratched line was there, and a tiny, fresh "you are here" arrow had appeared at my current position along it. This is my reality now. One walk, a few hundred feet. Then I returned to the map. my only anchor, and I carve a new section of the world into existence. I have to be careful. A slip of the hand could create a dead end, or a cliff. I tried drawing a road, once a parking lot, my car. But the wood resisted. It seems I can only create simple paths, only more of this forest. I am the cartographer of my own prison. I don't know how long I've been here. Days, weeks. The sun never seems to set. I survive on berries I carve into existence on the side of the path, and water from streams I etch into the map. My world is only as large as the path behind me. Everything else is a blank slate, waiting for my knife. Sometimes, when the silence gets too loud, I think about what would happen if I scratched out the path behind me. Would I cease to exist, or would I just be left standing on a single point on a map, with nowhere to go, forever? I'm too afraid to find out. For now, I just keep walking. I keep carving. My name is Alex, and here, and here, and here, and I think I'll be here for a very long time. Thanks for listening. If you find yourself at the edge of a park you've never seen before, maybe just turn around. Some places aren't meant to be explored. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories from the places you'd rather not be. Stay safe out there. The announcement echoed through the empty park, his tinny voice bouncing off the silent rides. The park is now closed. Please make your way to the nearest exit. I was the last one here, lingering a little too long, trying to soak up the last drops of daylight and nostalgia. I'd always loved this place as a kid. The smell of popcorn, the distant screams of joy from the roller coaster, the kaleidoscope of colored lights after dusk. It felt like coming home. I stuffed my hands in my pockets and started walking towards the main gate, the one with the giant, smiling clown face arching over it. The path was familiar, a well-trodden route I'd taken hundreds of times. But something felt off tonight. The air was heavier, the silence more profound. I passed the carousel, its painted horses frozen mid-gallop, their glass eyes seeming to follow me. A shiver ran down my spine, but I chalked it up to the evening chill. I reached a fork in the path, left for the main gate, right for the Ferris wheel and the rest of the midway. I knew for a fact the left path was the way out. I took it, my footsteps the only sound in the growing darkness. After a few minutes of walking, a familiar structure came into view. The jungle gym, the very same one I'd just passed near the entrance. That's weird. I must have gotten turned around. It was dark, after all. I laughed it off, a nervous, breathy sound that got swallowed by the quiet. Okay, let's try this again. I retraced my steps back to the fork. This time, I paid extra attention, keeping my eyes locked on the distant glow of the street lights beyond the park fence. Left path. Definitely the left path. I walked with more purpose this time, a brisk pace. The path curved, winding through a grove of trees that hadn't been there before, or at least, I didn't remember them being so dense. Their branches seemed to reach down, clawing at the air just above my head. And then I broke through the trees and found myself standing right back in front of the playground. The swings swayed gently, though there was no wind. The slide loomed like a dark, crooked spine. My heart started to beat a little faster. This wasn't right. I pulled out my phone. No signal. Of course, just my luck. Okay, panic is not the answer. There has to be a logical explanation. Maybe they changed the layout. Maybe I'm just really bad with directions tonight. I decided to take the other path from the fork, the one that led deeper into the park. My logic was flawed, I knew, but standing still felt worse. If I kept moving, I had to find an exit eventually. The entire park was fenced in. I just needed to find the fence. I walked past the silent arcade, its screens dark and lifeless. I passed the food stalls, their shutters pulled down like tired eyelids. Every step felt like I was wading through molasses. The atmosphere was thick with an unseen presence, and then I saw it again. The playground? I was standing in the exact same spot. It was impossible. I hadn't looped back. I had walked in a straight line. I stared at the swings, the slide, the jungle gym. It was as if the park was rearranging itself around me, funneling me back to this one spot. A flicker. I looked up. One of the lampposts above the playground sputtered to life, casting a sickly yellow glow over the sandpit. Then another, and another, until the entire play area was illuminated. The light was harsh, unnatural. It made the cheerful colors of the equipment look sinister. My breath caught in my throat. I backed away slowly, my eyes darting around, searching for any other movement, any other sign of life. Then the loudspeaker crackled. Not the loud, booming announcement from before, but a soft, static-filled hiss. It made the hairs on my arms stand up. The static cleared, and a voice drifted out. It was calm, serene, almost gentle. It wasn't the pre-recorded park announcer. This was someone new. "You can stay." The words hung in the air, simple and clear. My blood ran cold. I spun around, looking for the source of the voice, for anyone. The park was still deserted. Just me and the buzzing lights and the whispering voice from the speaker. I didn't want to stay. I wanted to leave. I screamed.
"Hello? Is anyone there?"
This isn't funny. My voice was small, pathetic against the overwhelming silence that followed. I started to run. I didn't care about paths anymore. I bolted, heading in what I prayed was the direction of the main gate. I ran past the haunted house, its fake ghosts and ghouls seeming all too real now. I sprinted by the log flume, its water still and black as ink. My lungs burned, my legs itched. I just had to get to the fence. I could climb it if I had to. I burst through a row of manicured hedges and skidded to a stop on the sandy ground. My heart sank into my stomach. The playground. I was back. The swings were still swaying. The lights were still buzzing. It was like a magnet, and I was a piece of iron, helplessly drawn to it. I fell to my knees, panting, defeated. I was trapped. The speaker crackled again. That same calm, patient voice. "We have all your favorite games." As it spoke, the carousel in the distance began to turn, its cheerful music box melody sounding like a funeral dirge in the oppressive silence. The lights on the Ferris wheel began to chase each other around its circumference, a dizzying, silent display. The park was coming to life, but not for me. It was waking up for itself. "Don't you want to play?" The voice cooed. I looked at the swings, which were now moving higher, faster, as if pushed by invisible hands. The slide seemed to stretch, its entrance a gaping maw. This wasn't my childhood playground anymore. This was a trap, a beautiful, colorful, terrifying trap. I got to my feet, shaking. "Who are you? What do you want?" I shouted at the empty air. The voice from the speaker was laced with something that sounded like amusement. "We just want you to have fun. Forever." The word echoed in my mind. Forever. I looked around at the ride slowly coming to life. The music box melodies from different attractions starting to blend into a discordant, maddening symphony. The happy clown face over the main gate, which I could now see was just another path leading back to the playground, seemed to be smiling wider. Its painted-on joy now a grotesque leer. I realized then that the park wasn't closed. It was just opening, and I was the only guest. The gates had closed behind me, not to keep others out, but to keep me in. The announcement hadn't been a warning to leave. It had been a countdown to the real show. And as the disembodied voice began to hum along with the twisted carousel music, I knew I would be hearing it for a very, very long time. There are no exits here. There's only the playground. Have you ever noticed those little plaques on park benches? The ones that say, "In loving memory of," or "Donated by." Well, I found one that was different. I was walking through this old, familiar park, the one I've known since I was a kid. The trees were the same ancient oaks. The paths were worn in the same places. I needed a break, so I found an empty bench and sat down. It was just a simple wooden bench, nothing special. But as I settled in, my eyes caught a small, brass plaque screwed into the back. It had just 5 words engraved on it. For those who waited. Strange, right? It wasn't a dedication. It felt more like an invitation. For those who waited. Waited for what? A friend? A bus? for things to get better. I didn't know, but the phrase stuck with me. Primera lea, Ned back. Closed my eyes, and just sat there, listening to the distant city hum, and the birds chirping overhead. I wasn't really waiting for anything specific. I was just resting. The sun was warm on my face, and for a few minutes, the world just fell away. It was one of those perfect, peaceful moments you can't plan. When I finally opened my eyes and decided to get going, something was off. The park. It wasn't the same. The trees seemed younger, their leaves a more vibrant, almost electric green. The pathways, once cracked and worn, were now smooth, freshly paved stone. The whole park felt brighter, newer. The air hummed with a different energy. There were sounds I'd never heard here before. The cheerful chime of an ice cream truck I didn't recognize. The laughter of children playing with toys that looked futuristic, like something out of a sci-fi movie. It was my park, but at the same time, it was completely alien. I felt a jolt of confusion, a little bit of panic. Had I dozed off for longer than I thought? I spun around to look at the bench, my heart pounding. It was still there, but it looked different too. The wood was polished, not weathered, and the plaque. The plaque had changed. The original 5 words were still there, for those who waited. But now, right underneath them, was a new line, freshly engraved as if it had just been etched that very second. It read, "Thank you for waiting." My mind raced. What did it mean? Was this a dream? A prank? I ran my fingers over the second line. The metal was smooth, the letters perfectly carved. It was real. I looked around at this new, unfamiliar version of my old park. The people walking by were dressed in styles I'd never seen. The skyline in the distance had buildings that definitely weren't there when I sat down. It was like I had taken a short rest and woken up in the future. A future that was brighter, louder, and utterly strange. The bench wasn't just a place to rest. It was some kind of temporal anchor. A waiting point between one reality and the next. And by sitting on it, being one of those who waited, I had somehow been thanked by being moved forward. To where? To when? I had no idea. The plaque offered no more clues. It just sat there, gleaming in the unfamiliar sunlight. I started to walk, my feet unsteady on the pristine new path. Every corner I turned revealed something new and bewildering. Flying vehicles buzzed softly overhead, holographic advertisements flickered in the air, and people were communicating with devices that were just slivers of light in their palms. It was overwhelming, incredible, and terrifying all at once. I was a ghost from a bygone era, a past that was only minutes old for me, but decades old for everyone else. I thought about going back to the bench. Would sitting on it again take me back? Or would it send me even further forward, or somewhere else entirely? The thought was tempting, but the risk was too great. What if there was no going back? What if this was it? My new reality. I had waited, and I had been thanked. But this thank you felt more like a curse. I was alone, a stranger in a strange time, with nothing but the memory of an old park and a cryptic message on a bench. The initial shock started to wear off, replaced by a strange sense of wonder. This new world was intimidating, yes, but it was also beautiful. The air was cleaner. People seemed happier, more relaxed. The technology was mind-blowing. Maybe this wasn't a punishment. Maybe it was a gift, a chance to see what humanity becomes. A chance to start over. The phrase "for those who waited" echoed in my head. It implied patience. It implied hope. Maybe the bench wasn't for people waiting for a friend. Maybe it was for people waiting for a better world. And here I was, standing in Italiano. I had no identity here, no money, no home. I was a blank slate, but I was also free. Free from my old life, my old routines, my old worries. All I had were the clothes on my back, and a story that no one would ever believe. I looked back one last time at the bench, a tiny, unassuming object that had completely unwritten my life. It was just a bench, but it was also a doorway. I took a deep breath of the clean, future air, and turned away from the bench for good. I didn't know what I was going to do next, or how I was going to survive. But for the first time in a long, long time, I felt a flicker of excitement. The world was new again. Everything was an adventure waiting to happen. I had waited, and now my wait was over. The real journey was just beginning. What would you have done? Would you have tried to go back? Or would you have embraced the unknown future? It's a crazy thought, isn't it? That a simple act of resting on a park bench could change everything. It makes you wonder about the little, overlooked things in our own world. What secrets are they holding? What stories are they waiting to tell? Next time you see a strange little plaque, maybe you'll think twice. Maybe you'll sit down and wait for a while. You never know where you might end up. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoy stories that bend reality, make sure to subscribe for more. See you in the next one.